Hello, everyone. I'm Victor Fett, along with my co-host, Dr. Kateryna Schray, and our program producer, Professor Larry Schray. We host a weekly discussion panel on Russia's war in Ukraine with guests from Ukraine, military experts, academics, literary figures, and relief workers. Our panel is recorded and circulated nationally and internationally. We appreciate your comments and feedback. Special thanks to Marshall University Libraries and MUIT for making this weekly event possible. If you are joining us live on Teams, please feel free to use the chat to post questions for our friends. A quick greeting to our viewers in Ukraine by Professor Kateryna Schray.
Вітаємо наших слухачів в Україні з глибоким поклоном. Ми далі свідки вашого страшного терпіння і також вашої великої сили. Дякую вам за вашу участь в нашій тижневій програмі.
Thank you. And I introduce Kateryna again because she is our today's guest. We honor the memory of Dr. Leonid Rudnytzky, who is Kateryna's father, and we continue this memorial conference, if you wish, in honor of his 90th birthday. This week's program will focus on Dr. Rudnytsky's interactions with civic, religious, and cultural leaders, and especially his work under the auspices of Cardinal Josyf Slipyj, Patriarch of the Ukrainian Catholic Church. Joining Kateryna Schray today are Professor Rudnytsky's former student Natalia Kovalyshyn and Dr. Iryna Ivankovych, President of the Saint Sophia Religious Association of Ukrainian Catholics. Professor Rudnytsky was a strong advocate for religious freedom and human rights in the former Soviet Union, Ukrainian philologist, award-winning educator and author, and foreign member of the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine, among other many things. Please, Kateryna, microphone is yours.
I'm very, very grateful, Victor, to you, to our friends at MUkraine, for dedicating last week's and this week's programs to the memory of my father, Professor Dr. Leonid Rudnytzky. As you said, last week we focused on his biography, his scholarship, and legacy as a teacher, and this week we'll talk about his interactions with civic, religious, and cultural leaders, with a particular focus on Patriarch Cardinal Josyf Slipyj. Leonid Rudnytzky came to the United States at the age of 16 in 1951. And he dedicated his life to restoring religious rights and basic human freedoms in the Soviet Union. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, fingers crossed. That work took many forms. That work took many forms and included his work as professor at LaSalle University, his work as rector of the Ukrainian Free University in Munich, and his many roles in the Shevchenko Scientific Society, which he was active for over 40 years. And most important for our purposes today is his work with the St. Sophia Religious Association of Ukrainian Catholics in America. And we have my two colleagues here who have worked with him in that cause, joining us for the second half of the program. Leonid Rudnytsky carried out each of these leadership roles with the goal of a free Ukraine. And last week we spoke about his decades-long friendship with his department chair at LaSalle, poet and scholar Dr. Bernard Blumenthal. So some of the work that he did here overlapped with his teaching time at LaSalle, and Leo Rudnytsky was always deeply grateful to Dr. Blumenthal for making it possible for him to serve in these capacities while also being a professor in the Department of Foreign Languages and Literatures. So we mentioned last week his teaching award and honorary doctorates, but Leo Rudnytsky also received numerous awards and honors outside of academia, and here are some of them. And the one that stands out for us right now is this last one. 2 weeks before his passing, Ukrainian Catholic Metropolitan Archbishop of Philadelphia, Boris Gudjak, awarded Professor Rudnytsky and his wife, Irene, the Metropolitan's 2024 Lifetime Service Award for lifelong Christian witness in marriage, family, multifaceted community engagement, education, scholarship, and lay ecclesial ministry and leadership in the Ukrainian Catholic Church. And the ceremony took place at the Rudnytsky home, attended by family, friends, colleagues, and members of the community. We don't have a photo from there, but we have a photo of Leo and Irene Rudnytsky with the Metropolitan Archbishop, whom they deeply love, from 2013. So a very important figure in their lives. My mother prays for the Archbishop every single day. Professor Rudnytsky's leadership extended beyond the intellectual and academic and into the practical and sometimes urgent. And starting in the mid-1970s, And for some 20 years after that, he and his best friend, engineer Julian Holochak, wrote, produced, and hosted The Voice of the Ukrainian Community, a weekly radio program in Philadelphia. And to talk about this program, I'm very happy to introduce Natalia Kovalyshyn, a dear family friend who worked with Leo Rudnytzky on the radio program. She was his teaching assistant at the Ukrainian Saturday School and his student at St. Clement Pope Ukrainian Catholic University summer sessions in Rome. Today happens to be Natalia's birthday. And also we celebrated this week the birthday of my father's longtime friend, Dr. Albert Kipa, a close colleague, dear friend, closest friend in his final decades. And I think my father would be very happy for me to mention that. So welcome, Natalia. Happy birthday, Mnohe Elita. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be asked to participate.
I'm glad you're here. Tell me, look at this. So I want to start by showing you this photograph. We actually showed this briefly last week, but I'm showing it again now. So look in the lower right-hand corner. Do you recognize that beautiful young woman?
I know. What happened to her over the years?
No, there you are. And tell us what you're doing. What's going on in this picture?
So this was actually taken at the studios of Channel 12 PBS in Philadelphia in the 70s, where we recorded a session on the traditions in Ukraine that pertain to Easter. We went through a 1-hour session where we taught our audience about Pisanki, Hayulki, the Mass, the services that we all participated in Thursday, Friday, and Sunday morning. And this was actually the part where we described the Easter eggs. And your father and I went back and forth explaining how one creates a Ukrainian Easter egg called the pisanka.
You actually are very famous in Philadelphia and probably elsewhere. Your pisanki are absolutely stunning, true, genuine works of art. Absolutely.
That's
gorgeous.
very kind, but at best, maybe in Philadelphia.
So here you are together at a media appearance, and I know you all work so closely together you could finish each other's sentences at times.
That is true. Very often on Saturday morning, your father would come in at 15:45, 20 after, and school would start at 9 o'clock. So as his student teacher, I would start the class, and having done it for so long and having been his student prior to that, I knew what was part of every lecture. And inevitably, about between 15:45 and 20 after, the door would open, he would walk in, and whatever sentence I was on, he would just pick up on the next word and continue.
That's great.
It was just two voices saying the same thing.
Looking at this media appearance, I don't think Leonid Rudnytzky ever got nervous in front of a camera, or even when he was in front of a live audience of 10,000 people.
No, he never was, and he never missed a beat. And that didn't matter whether it was on television, whether he was talking to a bunch of kids, or whether he was at the Ukrainian Catholic University in Rome, and everyone was sitting there and listening to what he had to say.
I envy that. I think that is amazing. That is amazing.
That was truly, it was a talent.
So some of that talent he used on air, and that was where you worked closely with him. Tell us about Holos Merian, the Voice of the Ukrainian Community radio program in Philadelphia.
So Holos Merian was a radio program that aired on Sunday evening. It was an hour-long program divided into two halves. The first half was Ukrainian, the second half was in English. It was designed in such a way because in Philadelphia, as well as in other places where the program could be heard, not everyone spoke Ukrainian, and it was important to your father that people understood what was going on in the church, what was going on with Patriarch Josyf, what was going on in Ukraine. His main goal was not just to present that week's news, but also to educate people so they knew where that news was coming from, what the thread was from the past to the present.
Well, and this is just to think about this. This is before the internet, where to find information, like now we get on our phones, we can find out what's happening in Ukraine easily. We can research anything we want. But this is before the internet, before social media, before podcasts. So this program, I take it, was a genuine source of information for the Ukrainian.
It was a lifeline for everyone to know what was happening and who was doing what where, because there was no YouTube. There was, like you said, no internet. And this was a very important lifeline to the Ukrainian community, not just in Philadelphia itself.
The show stopped airing in the late 1980s. So now 40 years after, what's the lasting impact of something like this, of a program like this?
I would have to say that one of the best memories that I have of that was that things could be changed last minute. There was a script. We were all handed a script. We all read from that script. But if news came in, if Pan Navratsky got a phone call in the middle of taping that there was a change that needed to be made or some earth-shattering event happened, things were changed on the spot. And I think that's what I remember the most, that it was always current and up to date. You got the latest.
I remember that too, actually. And back then, I remember, I think it was a rare situation where I think Pan Holochak was in Italy because Pan Holochak was essential to the actual taping of the program. And so for some reason, I remember a phone call, there's different time difference and everything, and
yes,
immediately them updating the program, and which was back then, that was breaking news because there's no internet. So your role, what was your role on the program?
So there was a English presenter and there was a Ukrainian presenter. And almost each and every time that I did the English section, Leonid Rudnytzky did the Ukrainian section. There was one time that Pan Holochak actually had to read it because your father wasn't there. But Pan Holochak was truly the glue that kept it together. He was able to slice and dice and put in recordings from other places, put in pieces of the mass that was said in Rome, put in what was happening in Toronto. He really, truly tied it all together and made everyone a part of what was going on.
Yeah,
he was a genius.
He was. I'm sharing a picture right now from one of those. This just happens to be just a random photo from one of the recording sessions. And you see engineer Julian Holochak, he's in the foreground. He is wearing the headphones and checking the sound quality. The Holochaks are one of the holiest and best families I've ever known. They work so quietly behind the scenes for the same causes actually that my father was, and with just as much passion and sacrifice. And Julian Holochak was by far one of the best friends of my father's entire life. And so behind him at the microphone is Leo Rudnytzky. He's seated there, and their guest for this particular program is the Ukrainian poet, statesman, and politician Dmytro Pavlychko. Pavlychko is very famous. He is one of the writers who co-authored the Ukrainian Declaration of Independence in 1990. And we're going to talk a little bit about this now. So thank you so much for your part, Natalia, in talking about the radio thing, your work on the radio program. I'm going to talk about Pavlychko just really briefly, and I'm going to transition to Kravchuk. Pavlychko served in the Ukrainian parliament. Leonid Rudnytzky met Pavlychko in Helsinki in 1962, and they remained good friends until Pavlychko's death in 2023. And in fact, on our program here, MUkraine, on February 3rd, 2023, Leonid Rudnytzky spoke in memory of Dmytro Pavlychko. Here are the two of them, slightly older, and again, remaining friends till the end of Pavlychko's life. In the mid-1980s, Julian Holochak and Leonid Rudnytzky also broadcast an international weekly program. This was called The Voice of the Ukrainian Diaspora, and they broadcast it into Ukraine to inform Ukrainians about world events, especially as they pertain to Ukraine. That program was often blocked by Soviet authorities who referred to Professor Rudnytzky as the pirate of the airwaves, which he absolutely loved. He took that as a huge compliment. And an important moment stands out from those transmissions into Ukraine. Right after the tragedy, the nuclear tragedy in Chernobyl, the disaster on April 26, 1986, Leo Rudnytzky and Julian Holochak and the team basically learned that Soviet officials were going to proceed with May 1st parade. So the Chernobyl happened April 26th, May 1st is less than a week away. and they were going to proceed with the May 1st parades in the affected regions. And so Professor Rudnytzky and Julian Holochuk swiftly mobilized medical professionals and experts in Philadelphia to be able to deliver and broadcast critical information on necessary precautions to take. I mean, to the extent that you could. I mean, I'm not sure what you can do after a nuclear disaster, but they were trying to make people aware of the dangers and offer whatever they could to minimize the impact on their health. So I want to return to Metropolitko really briefly here, because as a segue to President Leonid Kravchuk's visit to Philadelphia in May of 1992. Polichko was one of President Kravchuk's closest advisor. He served as president, Leonid Kravchuk served as president from 1991 to 1994. And his visit to Philadelphia is a great story. And last week, our guest, Andrei Luzhnitsky, referred to this briefly. So in late April 1992, it was announced that the first president of Ukraine, Leonid Kravchuk, was going to be coming to the United States. And recognizing the enormity of this event and the possibilities with it, Professor Rudnytzky worked with LaSalle President Brother Patriarch Alice to arrange for LaSalle to honor President Kravchuk with an honorary doctorate, which would be presented at LaSalle's graduate ceremony, which coincided time-wise with the state visit. In addition, it was very fitting and appropriate for the Ukrainian American community to welcome President Kravchuk with a banquet. The problem was that Professor Rudnytzky had only 3 weeks to make all this happen, and it did happen. And it happened largely because of his cousin, Christine Klyuchitsky, whom we also mentioned last week. So Christine Klyuchitsky was an organizing powerhouse in the Ukrainian American community, and very much like Leonid, she and her husband Bogdan devoted their lives and energy to the goal of a prosperous and free Ukraine. Christine Klyuchitsky and her friends Pani Senik and Pani Sira basically pulled off a miracle. Pani Senik was friends with the manager of the Bellevue Stratford Hotel in Philadelphia, which at the time was the most luxurious hotel in the city, and the trio secured the hotel's ballroom for the banquet and a luxurious suite for the Ukrainian delegation. It's amazing that the ballroom was available. That was because the hotel was available because President George H.W. Bush was scheduled to speak there the following day, so they had scheduled no events the day prior for security purposes. In fact, the Secret Service completed its security sweep of the building the night before Kravchuk's banquet. And so here we have a photo from that event. And here I want to share a sweet story about my mother. She's in the photo just a little to the right of center, and she's wearing a dotted business suit. And you can see Pani Kravchuk, Mrs. Kravchuk, is on the left-hand side of the photo, standing next to her husband facing forward. My mom actually had a beautiful ball gown for this occasion. The Kravchuks, my parents, and the Ukrainian delegation had spent a very long day together, going from the graduation ceremony for LaSalle University at Convention Hall to a tour of, quote, Ukrainian Philadelphia, so all the big Ukrainian sites in Philadelphia. And we've spoken about them on this program before. And that tour ended at LaSalle University, at which point my mother and Mrs. Kravchuk were being served snacks, and my mother encouraged Mrs. Kravchuk to eat something because it would still be several hours until the banquet. Mrs. Kravchuk looked concerned, but she said nothing until my mother gently asked her if anything was wrong, if she was worried about anything. And then Mrs. Kravchuk replied that she had not been told there was a banquet and she did not have a gown with her. And this was a big deal because the expectation for this event was people would be in evening gowns, very dressed up. So Mrs. Kravchuk, again, she's standing to the left of her husband in this picture. And you can see from this photo that my mother and Mrs. Kravchuk are the only two women seated on the front row of the dais, so visible to the audience. And my mother knew that this was likely going to be the case. And so she did two things. One, she scolded Metropolitko, famous Ukrainian statesman, chief advisor to President Kravchuk, for not doing a better job of communicating with the First Lady. And two, as you can see from the photo, she stayed in her business casual outfit herself instead of changing into evening wear, so that the two women were dressed at the same level. And so that consistent look took a lot of pressure off the event. That tour of Philadelphia was amazing and heartwarming experience for President and Mrs. Kravchuk. They stopped by the Ukrainian Catholic Cathedral, which is in downtown Philadelphia. They stopped by the Ukrainian Educational and Cultural Center, and they stopped by Manor College, which is America's only Ukrainian institution for higher learning. Manor College was founded by the Sisters of St. Basil the Great, a Ukrainian religious order, in 1947. Kravchuk was very impressed with Manor. He knew that there were many Ukrainian places of worship and institutions in the United States, but visiting Manor and the Ukrainian Heritage Center was especially joyful for him. From all accounts, President Kravchuk felt very warmly welcomed and embraced by the Ukrainian American community in Philadelphia. Leonid Rudnytzky and Leonid Kravchuk remained friendly until President Kravchuk's death in 2022. Leonid Rudnytzky's personality was probably his greatest asset in advocating for Ukraine, probably even more useful than his intelligence. Andrei Luzhnitsky spoke about his friendships and meetings with German leaders last week. Here he is with several U.S. officials over the decades advocating for Ukraine. He made friends easily. He valued good, honest conversations. He struck up an intellectual friendship with Cardinal Karol Wojtyla, who went on to become Pope John Paul II. Both of them were teaching at Harvard during the summer session and enjoyed each other's company. He took every opportunity to introduce Ukrainian writers to American audiences, be it through translations, scholarly publications, or whenever possible in person. Here are some of the writers that he met with, brought to the United States, and held events with, introduced at scholarly venues. And I would be amiss not to mention how important the Shevchenko Scientific Society, NTSHA, was to Leonid Rudnytzky, and how committed he was to that scholarly organization, serving as its president for many years. There's a lot of photos from events from NTSHA, but I picked this one because it is also a great photo of history professor Dr. Miroslav Lubunka, Leonid Rudnytzky's cherished colleague, dear friend, and mentor. Dr. Lubunka is seated, he's the person closest to the camera. He's seated in the front row on the left-hand side of the photograph. He's wearing glasses. His hands are folded in front of him. Professor Lubunka was a prolific scholar and a great intellectual. And Professor Rudnytzky said on numerous occasions that he would not be the academic he became without Professor Lubunka's friendship and mentorship. NTSHA, the Shevchenko Scientific Society, is a worldwide organization, and here he is in Lviv with another very important person in his life, a dear friend, Father Archimandrit Lubomir Huzar. He is the cleric standing directly across from my father, who became Patriarch of the Ukrainian Catholic Church and a Cardinal in 2001. So now I'm going to transition to the most important aspect of Leo Rudnytzky's life, and that is his faith. Leonid Rudnytzky cherished his faith. He strove to protect the underground church during Soviet times, advocating for its recognition and contributing to the celebration of the millennium of Christianity in Ukraine. In 2004, he became a Knight of the Sovereign Order of Malta, formally committing to a life of faith, charity, and service that he was already living. And in fact, he was laid to rest wearing the Knight of Malta vestments. With undiminished perseverance, he fought for the recognition of the Patriarchate of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church. Here he is with Patriarch Josyf Slipyj in Rome. This is a little less than a decade after the Patriarch is released from decades-long Soviet imprisonment. In 1974, Leonid Rudnytzky became part of the original group of faithful gathered by his beatitude Patriarch Cardinal Josyf, and that's the founding of the St. Sophia Religious Association of Ukrainian Catholics. And here we have most of that original group with Archbishop Miroslav Ivan Lubachevsky at the time. And here we see his dear friends. On the far left-hand side, we see Dr. Albert Kipa. And then standing directly to the right of Leo Rudnytzky is his friend, engineer Julian Holochak, with whom he'd had the radio programs. Dr. Romana Noratsky is seated in blue, and her husband, Dr. Miroslav Noratsky, is probably the one taking the photo. From 2004 to 2018, Professor Rudnytzky served as president of St. Sophia, and he dedicated more than 50 years of his life to that organization. Patriarch Josyf appointed Leonid Rudnytzky as director of the Ukrainian Catholic University affiliate in Philadelphia, Elkins Park. And here we have a photo of him and Dr. Noratsky at that institution. One of Patriarch Josyf Slipyj's many projects was the establishment of the St. Clement Pope Ukrainian Catholic University in Rome, which offered summer courses for young Ukrainian high school graduates from around the world. And to talk about Professor Rudnytzky's contribution to that effort, I'm so happy to bring back into the conversation Natalia Kovalyshyn. Natalia, that is a huge crowd.
That really is. And that was the type of crowd that you had every single year at the university. And we all got together 2 or 3 times during the classes, which were almost 5 weeks long. We met with Patriarch Josyf. We met with whoever the dignitaries were visiting Rome at the time that had come to see him. We all interacted. We spent time together, not just to take a photo or in classroom sessions, but also one-on-one, doing field trips, getting to know each other, talking to our professors as if they were equal to us. Nobody questioned, nobody judged. If we had any questions, if we had any concerns, this was certainly the time to talk to someone who was older and who could guide you. The classes took place Monday through Friday. They were in the morning. The afternoon was free. You could go around Rome. You could go visit museums. You could do your homework if you so chose. And hopefully you were ready for the next day. On Saturday, we all participated in trips, whether it was to Pompeii, Assisi, Florence, and this was not just the students, but also the professors.
Oh, we have a photo of that coming up. Before I go to that, though, I hope I did this right. I tried very hard to find you, and I hope that's you, circled there on the bottom.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's Leonid Rudnytzky all the way in the top, because even in this crowd, he was head and shoulders above everyone.
He was tall, 6'5", 6'6", sometimes 6'4", it varied.
Yes.
So thank you for telling us about the summer courses. Tell us a little bit about the professors who taught them, and what was covered and why was all that important?
So the professors vary year to year. There were certain ones that were a staple. Every other year, Leonid Rudnytzky would come. Every other year or so, Professor Labuinka would come. These were organized by Professor Lunchina. Professor Lau was another staple. We also had Pani Ocharenko, who, if you look at the photograph, is in the first row to the left, the lady with the gray hair.
Okay, yeah.
We also, in this particular photo, have Professor Keese from Toronto. Somewhere in there is Otec Dr. Nahayevsky, who was there that year. We were introduced not only to religious history and religious events at the time by the clergy who taught, but we also learned literature, we learned grammar. We actually learned history outside of Ukrainian history. Professor Lunchina always tried to have something that dealt with Italy, whether it was the story of Italian independence or just teaching us Italian language, which he did an outstanding job. If we had just all gone back and studied what he took so hard and so painstaking to present to us, we could have all spoken Italian in 5 weeks. We also had Otec Rudnytzky, who came from Munich. He tried to explain to us not just the role of the Ukrainian Catholic Church as far as what it meant to us, but he, like your father and a lot of the other professors, tried to put it into the context of where Ukraine fit into the world. Школа Українознавства, which is what we all spent 12 years going to on Saturdays, taught us the history, the literature, the basics of grammar as it pertained to Ukraine. What we got from UKU was Ukraine within a world. Where was our place? Where did we fit in? How did this all work?
Oh, wow. Wow. That's wonderful. I actually attended the summer courses myself, and so did my sister a couple years after you. And it was an amazing experience. While we were there, there was also a group of young women from Yugoslavia, what was then Yugoslavia. And it was really a chance to learn as well about the experience of other people my age in other parts of the world that didn't have all the luxuries of growing up in the United States. It was very, very humbling and amazing. All right.
What was special about these classes was that people came from all over the world. It wasn't just students from America or students from Canada. We had, throughout the 3 years that I attended, we had people from Germany, we had students from France, we had students from Canada, but not Toronto or Eastern Canada. I believe they were from Alberta or British Columbia. So they had a totally different view of what it was to be Ukrainian.
Yeah. So here, what's going on in this photograph? This looks like one of those weekend trips you were talking about.
Yes, this is from a small cafe outside of the museum in Florence. And sitting opposite your father, and we only see her in profile, is Zoya Kohut,
Oh, wow.
the famous writer from Australia. She spent many summers in Rome where she wrote her poetry. She spoke to the students. She went on day trips with us. She interacted with us. Essentially, for those 5 weeks, many a time she became our mom. And this group that you see here, we decided that summer we needed a mom and a dad. So we called Leonid Rudnytzky Tato and Zoya Kohut Mama. And if we needed anything, depending on what it was that you needed, you went to ask either Tato or Mama. And they were our buffer between us and Otech Harbanko, who ran Madonna Diamante, which is where we all lived. And he was very regimental. There were no exclusions to any of his rules. So if you went out in the evening and you did not get back by his time of curfew, the doors were locked and you hoped somebody would let you in. And this was way before cell phones. So the only way you could let somebody know you were out there was to ring the doorbell. And there were times when we really probably would have preferred to have slept in the street on that curb than ring the doorbell and have Otech Harbanko open the door for us and go, and why were you not here when you were supposed to?
I think there's a story actually of you climbing through a window with the assistance of my father.
So a lot of the places that we went to in the evenings, we had to rely on public transportation. And one of the places that each year we wanted to go was Tivoli Gardens, which was on the outskirts of Rome. You had to walk to the train station, which was also the bus station was by there. You took a bus. It was a half an hour ride. The bus left every half an hour. You went to Tivoli. You spent the evening, and then you took the appropriate bus to come back, and you made the 15-minute walk back to Madonna Diamante. Unfortunately, we got there, the whole group of us, including your father and 2 other professors, and the bus was pulling away and it was not going to stop. So there we stood at the bus stop for a half an hour, waiting for the next one, trying to figure out how exactly we were all going to get in because there was nobody left to let us in.
Oh boy.
When we got there, conveniently, one of the windows was open. And since I was the smallest of the group and your father was the tallest, he didn't think twice. He just hoisted me in and said, open the door quietly. Don't make any noise.
Oh my goodness.
So I got in. There was no problem. I walked down the hall. I opened the inside door. I got to the outside door. And just as I touched the latch and it started to squeak, all the lights went on.
Oh boy.
At that point, I realized we were set up. That window was left open and we fell right for it.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, that's
So
funny.
as I was being questioned and chided that we were late and what was I doing, I continued to open the door. Your father was there. He pushed it open, got between me and Otech Harvanko, and then proceeded to just shoot all of us upstairs. He and the other professor, I think it was Professor Keith, stayed behind. And they had quite the conversation because the lights were on for a while downstairs.
Oh boy.
We don't know what was said. All we know is no one ever questioned us about breaking curfew that night.
Oh my gosh. I really appreciate you sharing that story. That's great. That's great. Before we transition to the next segment, are there any final thoughts or memories or anything that you'd like to say? You were very, very important to him. Very important to him. And I know that his passing has been very hard for you.
It is. I would have to say that as a teenager, most girls have their little clique of friends, and that is who knows everything about their life, and that is who they talk to. That's who they go to get advice from. As I was growing up, Leonid Rudnytzky was first my teacher. He was then my mentor. He was my professor, but most of all, throughout all of that, he was my best friend. He didn't judge. He didn't lecture. And most of all, he never, ever talked down to any of us. There was no such thing as dummying down a conversation or dummying down an explanation. We were all expected to rise to the occasion and understand what he had to say to us. And in that, I think he made us all better students, most of all, better people.
Yeah, and Natalia, thank you so much for sharing your remembrance of him. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you for having me. He was a very, very special person in my life.
And you were in his.
Thank you.
Patriarch Josyf Slipyj was probably the most important public figure in Leonid Rudnytzky's life. And to talk about the relationship between Patriarch Josyf and Professor Rudnytzky, I'm very grateful to welcome back to our program Dr. Iryna Ivankovych. She's the current president of the St. Sophia Religious Association of Ukrainian Catholics, and she was on our program in April of 2023, talking about the Philadelphia community's efforts to send humanitarian and tactical aid to Ukraine after Russia began its brutal attack. Dr. Ivankovych is one of the world's leading experts on Patriarch Josyf, and in fact, she'll be presenting on his life and legacy in Scotland next month, and we hope to have her back on the same subject on our programs as well. Iryna, welcome, welcome. I know this is hard for our guests. Thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's an honor and pleasure.
Before we talk about Patriarch Josyf, tell us a little bit about your work with Leonid Rudnytzky. You worked with him for over 17 years. How did you meet?
That is actually a funny story. We moved to the States in 2006, and for 2 years I worked as an editor for the Way Archeparchial newspaper, and I got into the Ukrainian community. So at that time, St. Sophia Association needed an editor for their annual bulletin. And one of our mutual friends suggested or maybe recommended Professor Rudnytzky to get in touch with me. So there I was working in the Archeparchy, and one day the phone rang and there was the gentleman with his deep voice saying, "This is Leonid Rudnytzky. I would like to request an honor of a meeting with you." And I froze. I froze because the name Leonid Rudnytzky was something unattainable for me. And we decided to meet on April 11th, 2008. Why I remember this date and why it is important, because it coincided with the anniversary of the arrest of Patriarch Josyf Slipyj. So I would always joke that just as Patriarch Josyf decided to become a voluntary prisoner of Christ, I became a voluntary prisoner of Professor Rudnytzky's and St. Sophia Association. And I vividly remember that day. I probably changed 4 or 5 outfits. And my late husband was telling me, "Well, put this, don't put that." And when I came to St. Sophia, first of all, I got lost. I missed the turn, and then I was sweating. I remember my pulse was probably about 120. But as we sat, as I met Professor Rudnytzky and we sat down, he made me feel very, very comfortable. We started talking about the work that he needed me to do. And he started asking questions about my education. And during that first meeting, I mentioned to him that I was in the middle of PhD, but life got in the way and I didn't have a chance to complete my studies. So he said, "Well, you have to do it and you have to finish it." And that was done in one sentence. And 2 years later, I was a student at Ukrainian Free University, completing my PhD, for which I'm profoundly grateful to him because he was behind that decision.
My goodness. I heard you calling him Pan Lelko, and I love that. I love that very close address between the two of you. So many of your projects with Pan Lelko revolved around the life and legacy of Patriarch Josyf Slipyj. And so I'm going to ask you now to do the impossible in 2 minutes or less. Remind us all who Patriarch Josyf Slipyj was.
Oh, this is a challenge because to encapsulate the grandeur of Patriarch Slipyj even in a 2-hour lecture would be impossible. Yeah. So I would probably highlight his major roles throughout the 92 years of his life. First and foremost, he was a Ukrainian. That's undoubtedly so. He was a beneficiary of Metropolitan Andrei Shevchenko's legacy. He was his student, and I would probably say he was his spiritual son. He was a scholar, a phenomenal theologian, an educator. He was a confessor of faith and a Gulag prisoner for 18 years. Cardinal and ethnarch. This is the term that Professor Rudnytzky coined for Patriarch Josyf Slipyj, a patriarch and an unwavering fighter for the rights of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church and Ukraine. After his return to the free world, after his 18-year imprisonment, he truly revived the Ukrainian diaspora, and I think you will agree with me on that one. He established the St. Clement Ukrainian Catholic University in Rome, which you've already mentioned. He built St. Sophia Cathedral in Rome, which is a magnificent architectural artwork. He founded St. Sophia Association in Italy, in the States, in Canada, in England, and in Belgium. Just to imagine, he visited 14 countries, which became the homeland for millions of Ukrainians. But most of all, I think that is important that he remained steadfast in the face of Soviet totalitarian regime.
Wow. Please tell us a little bit about the work you did with Leo Rudnytzky, and I've got a picture to show about that. He looks very happy there, by the way, in the picture on the right-hand side. I mean, he looks very proud. Actually, looks very proud of both of them. But that I love that picture of the two of you with him extending his hand that way in triumph or something.
That was the first book that we published together. The Way to Eternity, Immortality, I'm sorry. That was commemorating the 30th anniversary of Josyf Slipyj's passing. But working with your father, Professor Rudnytzky, was not just an intellectual, was not intellectually enriching, not just. It was also for me an experience of having a father figure, because he knew how to guide, encourage, appreciate, motivate. He was a shoulder to lean on. And for 16 years of my life, we worked hand in hand on numerous editorial projects. We organized conferences, symposia, published books, which I'm going to talk a little bit after. He was a very caring boss, because we would work for 2-3 hours, and it was probably intellectually strenuous. So he would always say, "It's time for break. Let's grab something to eat." And your mother was always there to serve something delicious, and we would go back to work. He would make sure that this work was always acknowledged properly, and I hope that he did appreciate our cooperation, which I cherish so much.
I can assure you that he did. He spoke of you often with immense gratitude, and you. He had a very productive career. You, in the last decades of it, extended that and made it better than he could have hoped for. So you were absolutely essential and crucial in his life, and also as in his affection. Thank you for all that. Thank you for all that.
Thank you. And even when we came head to head on and had heated discussions, he would never let it get between us. We would always reconcile the differences, and I've learned so much from him. He shaped me as a scholar and as a person. And just to show you some samples of work that we did together, you've already seen The Way to Immortality that you have on the screen. That's the day when we had a presentation in Philadelphia. Then he was the one who encouraged Professor Yaroslav Pelikan to write a scholarly biography of Josyf Slipyj. this book is probably, I would probably say it's Bible for the historians of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, because it's an excellent read. So in 1990, this book was published in English, but then 35 years later, he encouraged me to translate it into Ukrainian. So in 2015, yes, in 2015, the book was published, first edition. And because it was so popular, 2 years later, we had to do the second edition of the book.
Wow.
So he wrote a foreword to the Ukrainian translation, sharing his long friendship with Yaroslav Pelikan. That's a read. Then in 2019, the book Черевики Рибалки, The Shoes of the Fisherman, a famous novel by the Australian writer Maurice West, came out in Ukrainian. So he wrote the afterword, also sharing his relationships with Patriarch Josyf Slipyj.
Wait, who translated that? Is that you? Maurice
This
West?
one?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah,
That you being way too modest. That is that is an impressive work. That's a very impressive
Thank
work.
you. These two things, yes, they are my work. And your father was a pioneer in researching Josyf Slipyj's interest in literature. In 2013, he compiled an anthology of literary works dedicated to Patriarch Josyf Slipyj, Serce Żywe Dzierżało, which is, how do they translate it? The living source of the heart. So that was it. And then when I followed his footsteps in digging deeper, as he would say, into the topic, and the 2-volume edition was published about Josyf Slipyj and literature. The second volume was a continuation of that anthology. Serce Żywe Dzierżało was the I think it complemented your father's work. And then there is the monumental and our last work together. This is the Testament of Josyf Slipyj that we published in 9 languages. Your father was the first person who collected translations of this wonderful work into other languages, and he initiated actually 3 translations, Serbian, Russian, and Spanish. So this is a masterpiece, truly a masterpiece. This is our last piece of work, symbolically also the testament, and it's something he wanted to do for over 10 years, and we published it. Right, it was May of 2022 when the war already was ravaging Ukraine. So that's our last piece of work together.
That's beautiful. It's a beautiful volume.
Yes.
There's and I know we're going to talk about the Festschrift in just a second. I want to go back to sharing and see if this will work. I want to go back and advance the slide one more time. I'm very bad at the whole technical part here. I take it.
You're doing great.
Well, thank you. Do you see a slide? Do you see a picture of yourself on the screen again, or no? Okay,
yes, there are 2 pictures.
Okay, so the problem is I don't know how to get to the next picture from here because I've lost my. Oh, here we go. Okay, the situation has been remedied. Here we go. Okay. Back to this. It's just not a random, but a photo. Natalia, you may actually have been at this event. This is the celebration of Patriarch Josyf Slipyj's 90th birthday.
Yes, I was.
Yeah, so Leonid Rudnytzky is in the background there, but he was emceeing the event, which he often did. He often did a lot of that kind of public appearance stuff. Yeah. What do you remember anything about this event? Any brief, quick memories?
My vaguest memory of this is that at the end, when everything was officially finished, whatever transpired between your father and Blazhenyshchy, I think he made a joke about something, because that was the heartiest that I saw Blazhenyshchy laugh.
That's great. Oh, that's great. I love that. I love that.
It was this, he leaned down because he was so tall. He leaned down to Blazhenyshchy, and Blazhenyshchy said something to him, and he responded back, and the response from Patriarch Josyf was just this hearty laugh. And at that point, he was older. And to hear that laugh was just so heartening.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you.
And
Thank
like with all the other occasions that took place in Rome, there were just thousands of Ukrainian pilgrims from all over the world to share it with him.
That's great. I'm going to show another picture and this time ask Iryna for you to tell us what's going on in this one.
Yeah, that was Patriarch Sviatoslav's very first visit to the United States. And about half a year before, Professor Rudnytzky established the Josyf Slipyj Research Center in the premises of St. Sophia Association. So Patriarch Sviatoslav, and you also see Metropolitan Stefan Soroka, the ruling metropolitan of Philadelphia at that time, they were invited to the opening of that center. And obviously, as always, at St. Sophia, reception followed. And those you also can see Professor Kipa far left. So they just toasted to a newly established patriarchal institution.
And I believe you're the director of that establishment, correct?
Yes, I have an honor of being its director. The first director was Dr. Alexander Luzhnitsky of the Blessed Memory.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Oh, wow. Well, thank you for the immensely important work you've undertaken. We're coming near to the end of our time, but tell us a little bit about the Festschrift that just came out. And I'm going to stop sharing again a little bit. This is a monumental work that you've spent a lot of time on.
We did it. Well, this Festschrift, as you can see, it hasn't been officially presented yet. The presentation is going to happen on the 28th of September, when we are going to have a memorial evening for Professor Rudnytzky at St. Sophia. So initially, it was planned as planned in honor of his 90th. And I was secretly conspiring with other scholars, and I shared it with Kateryna, that it would be wonderful to have something done like him. And I think I had already recruited about 6 or 7 scholars. We managed to stay clandestine. He didn't know a clue about it. And then just during one of the conversations, he said, I have so many memories that people wrote about me. It would be nice to compile it. And I couldn't hold it any longer. So I told him, I said, we are preparing something for your 90th anniversary. And I saw tears in his eyes. Literally, he was so moved and touched because of that. And he questioned me who would be in that Festschrift. He was really, really appreciative of that. So Kateryna and I basically navigated the project till it was published. Last week on Professor Rudnytzky's birthday, the official news came out, and Kateryna wrote a beautiful foreword to this edition. It has 3 sections. The articles are in Ukrainian and in English. It is supplemented by a beautiful photo section that features his family life, his scholarly work. They were carefully selected by Professor Rudnytzky's family. And it also features memoirs of his friends and students. So this is something that we would like to honor him with on his 90th.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Before I say goodbye, I'm going to share one more photograph. And this one let me see here. Sorry. Remember, I'm doing great. I'm going to share one more photograph, and this one is of the baptism of Julian Holochak's youngest daughter, Lesha Holochak Webster. Recall that Pan Holochak was one of the founding members of St. Sophia, and the entire Holochak family was very dear to Patriarch Josyf. And Pan Holochak was Leo Rudnytzky's much beloved friend, and Leo Rudnytzky is Lesz's godfather. So you can tell from this photograph, it's no ordinary event. Any baptism of a child is a big deal. It's the beginning of the sacramental relationship between the child and the Almighty. Here, poor little Lesya is nestled in her godmother's arms and hardly the focus of the picture. And I guess that's what happens when the Patriarch of the Ukrainian Catholic Church comes to baptize you. And it's a lovely photo and a lot going on. You see people straining, trying to get a better look. And I do like the point of this photograph is Lesya being baptized. But obviously there's a lot more going on there. And I'm actually struck by how young my father looks and how young Pan Holochak looks. Mr. Holochak's actually in the front of the photo. He's holding the microphone. Both of these men are not even in their 40s yet. And they're just two young men who Patriarch Josyf saw fit to entrust with the important work of defending the church. And just as Lesya grew up to be an amazing young woman, these two men grow in faith and leadership, and they go on to do absolutely amazing things for Ukraine. So I'm very touched by this photograph in a different way since my father's passing. Iryna, thank you for everything you're doing today and always. He loved working with you. He loved you. He loved working with you. You were so essential to him. It's almost unfair to ask you for any final thoughts, but if there's anything that you would like to share, I'd be glad to hear it. And then I'm going to go ahead and share a video clip in a second.
Well, probably the one of the most vulnerable moments was when my husband passed away, and at that time I was in Rome. Your father called me overseas, and he with trembling voice he just asked, "Іринка, що сталося? Ми з тобою." That was having that person in your life who cares so much. And I remember that when we got back, I cried on his shoulder, and your mom was so kind to us, because we were like, our life completely changed in the fraction of a second. She would always have like a small pot of soup for me and my daughter, because we were going through really tough times at that time. So that kind of care, that kind of presence, that just creates a bond that is unbreakable, and it remains with you for the rest of your life. So losing him was a hard blow on me.
Thank you for everything you were to him and continue to be to him. And with that, I'm going to head into our final segment. It's a 3-minute video clip. There is no lack of footage featuring Leonid Rudnytzky, and our production team had lots to choose from. So we considered his emceeing the banquet for President Kravchuk. We considered various speeches, media appearances, even the beautiful solemn events that both of you attended, Natalia and Iryna, at my parents' house when Metropolitan Gudjak presented him and my mom with the Lifetime Award. So we thought about all this footage, but what we're going to show actually is not a public event or a major speech. It's just a brief 3.5 minute clip. It's a somewhat chaotic excerpt from a family video, and it's going to tie together a lot of what we've been talking about already. In this video, Leonid Rudnytzky tells his very, very young grandchildren, this is from 2012, I think, tells his very young grandchildren about Patriarch Josyf Slipyj. One of the grandkids is now a college student at Drexel, and that was Grigory Rudnytzky. He was a guest in our program several weeks ago. The other 4 kids who you'll hear ask questions or speak up, they're also either in grad school or in college as well. About a minute into the video, one of the little kids turns on a musical toy, so there's some extra sounds in the background. So this is chaos. But hopefully they won't take away from the overall feeling of the clip, which is kind of like the point. And after the video, in the back end, I'm going to come in with just a few more words of gratitude. So fingers crossed. Here we go.
Thank you for coming. It's very nice to see you all together
Still going,
here.
you're part of it.
I wish I could speak Ukrainian, because we're going to talk today about a very, very important
you have a
person
minute or
in
two?
Ukrainian history.
Okay.
His name is Josyf Slipyj. He was a cardinal of the Roman Church and the Patriarch of the Ukrainian Church. Yes, do you want something, Shorty?
Why did the cardinal get sent to Siberia?
Who told you that he was sent to Siberia? Who is that? Mommy. I wonder how Mommy knew. Do you know how Mommy knew?
I did it because of you.
Yeah, I suppose. I'm guilty. But he was sent to Siberia because he was a Christian, because he was a Ukrainian, and because he was the leader of the great Ukrainian Catholic Church that the Soviet Union, headed by a very evil person named Stalin, liquidated. And all the members of the Catholic Church were either sent to Siberia or made to become Russian Orthodox. To answer your question, yes. I wish I had students like you in my LaSalle University. Just one. Yeah.
How did we become a cardinal?
Well, that is a very good question, because cardinals are usually appointed by the Pope. But in the case of Josyf Slipyj, it was dangerous to appoint him, because who knows what the Russians, the Soviets might have done to him. So he was appointed in pectore, which means in the heart, which means secretly. The Pope appointed him secretly a cardinal of the Holy Roman Catholic Church. Yes, Baron?
How did he survive in Siberia?
Yeah, that too is an amazingly intelligent and perceptive question. He survived. He was very weak in health, but he survived because he had a very, very strong faith. He believed in God, and he believed in the salvation of the Ukrainian Catholic Church and the entire human race through Jesus Christ. And his strong faith and his strong will enabled him to survive. He was a person who could not be scared, he could not be frightened, he could not be bought nor coerced into doing anything that he didn't want to do.
Do you guys understand what it means to be that brave?
Yes.
Can you give me an example of what it means to be that brave?
It means no. Well, what it means is that you trust God so much that you believe that anything that happens is God's will, so you don't care to die, and like it doesn't matter if you die or live.
Very good.
Kind of.
Do you think he was afraid sometimes?
Yes.
Yeah. How come? Why do you think he was afraid?
Because he's in Siberia. And it's the coldest place pretty much on Earth that I can think of. Well, besides Antarctica.
So is it okay to be afraid and still have faith in God?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Okay, we're going to wrap this first segment up. Okay, yeah. And I'm going to wrap that segment up too. So you get a little sense of, there's so many places where he spoke and he lectured, but here he is talking to a bunch of kids. It's just kind of felt right to kind of wrap up with that. So actually, as we head into formally wrapping up our time together, I do want to say that Victor, you were such a source of joy to him in his final years. Victor, my father met Victor really through this program, never in person, but he was on several of our episodes talking about things that mattered, talking about what was going on in Ukraine. My father, Victor would send my father his poetry, and my father would read it. In fact, when I went back to my parents' house, one of Victor's books was on the nightstand, and he would refer to Victor as that brilliant young man. So you are, in fact, you are a brilliant young man and a very amazing poet. I think since the war began, it was very difficult for my father. He had a stroke shortly thereafter. But Victor, you sustained him. And I'm very, very grateful for that. And very grateful for your friendship in his final years. He thought the world of you. And
thank you. I'm honored.
With that, I'm going to go ahead, and I hope I do this correctly. I'm going to share one more time the slides. I'm not going to use the slideshow function. I'm just going to keep this one slide up here. So A heartfelt thank you on behalf of my mother, my sister, and my brother for commemorating Leonid Rudnytzky on this program. He was in every way larger than life, not only physically imposing, but also intellectually giant and full of charisma and energy. As children, we felt safe, protected, championed. We felt like we were the cubs of a lion growing up. Our father was a great man. He was also a good one. His heart was huge and fearless, and it could absorb a lot of burden and so much suffering and be filled with hate, faith, hope, and love. He often jokes, and I'm sure the two of you will remember this, that humility in his case would be hypocrisy. But the truth is that he was actually a very humble man when it came to things that mattered. And he understood very well how lucky he was. As we talked about this week and last week, he was blessed with amazing mentors, family members, colleagues, friends, most of whom departed this earth before him. At our father's parastas, his goddaughter and our dear friend Lesha, who we talked about, made us smile when she said that she could only imagine the welcome party for him in heaven. And it's a lovely, comforting, and healing thought, and one very easy to envision. And that welcome party would include Lesha's own father, Julian Holochuk, our father's best friend for many decades, and the rest of the founders of St. Sophia. Our father's department chair and good friend, Dr. Bernhard Blumenthal, would also be there, as would his wise mentor, cherished colleague, and dear friend, Dr. Miroslav Labunka, and mentors from various stages of his life, Rudnytzky, Professor Volodymyr Yanov. And perhaps even embracing him would be his beatitude Cardinal Josyf Slipyj, who changed our father's life forever by entrusting him with the work of the Ukrainian Catholic Church and clarifying his life's purpose. No doubt he rejoiced in being reunited with his parents, Ivan Theodor and Yulia Rudnytzky, our father again, a smiling young teenager, standing between his beautiful mother and his handsome father, their hearts overflowing with love and filled with pride at what their son had achieved. He again saw his cousin from Lviv, Andrei Rudnytsky, with whom he was reunited after the fall of the Soviet Union, and he was happy again to be with his beloved cousins, Krystyna Krutitsky and Alexander Luzhnitsky, who were essentially his siblings. In fact, in the unlikely case that such things as cultural heritage matter in heaven, his friends would welcome him with the traditional bread and salt, with Alexander Luzhnitsky following up with 100 haram of the good stuff. And the good stuff for Alexander Luzhnitsky was the free stuff. So God bless them all now and forever, and may they pray for us and the tasks before us. They worked so tirelessly for our beloved Ukraine and for humankind in general, and they sought to make the world a better place. They fought the good fight, they finished the race, they kept the faith. God bless our Father and all that departed. May they rest in peace. Amen.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone who took part in our 185th weekly program commemorating Leonid Rudnytsky, Kateryna's father. Thank you, Natalka. Thank you, Iryna. Thank you, Kateryna.
Thank you. Thank you very,
Thank
very
you.
much. Final blessing or final.
Please do.
Дорогі браття і сестри в Україні, ми зберігаємо вас у наших щоденних думках і молитвах. Нехай милосердний Бог тримає вас у своїй опіці. До наступного тижня. Прощаємося.
Слава Україні!
Героям
Героям
слава!
слава!